Okay. Okay, Tristan, I'm sorry, I'm getting geeked up here. Give me 1 second.
That's all good. I ain't in any rush.
Right?
I like your tie.
Right? It's legit.
Very
You can begin whenever you're ready.
Ready? Hello. I am just so unexcited to give this speech right now. Now, obviously, this probably wasn't the right tone of voice to use with what I just said. That's called paralinguistics. All right, so I found, when I was researching these topics here for this speech, I found paralinguistics kind of interesting. It's something everyone uses every single day, and yet many of us might not think about it. In 1950s, a man named George L. Traeger, he was the president of the American Linguists Association. He defined paralinguistics as paralinguistics is a kind of action language that involves tone of voice, hesitation, or speed of speech, and certain variations of other actions. Now, obviously, like my intro, I used a very excited tone about something that maybe I might have not originally used. What I'm going to talk about today is going to be how to help you master those skills in certain situations in both a social environment and where everyday life and dealing with people, a more maybe business or work environment, and also, lastly, we'll go over just possibly how not using the correct ways can affect you and your involvement with other people. So we're going to start off with kind of that everyday life, kind of using it socially. Obviously, some of you have kids or have dealt with people, having mothers. Y'all are familiar with this situation of possibly talking back and your mother or you saying to your children, "Watch your tone." Right? Yeah. Obviously, to them, the tone of voice you're using with what you're saying wasn't correct. So in that situation, you're using incorrect paralinguistics. Same with giving a speech. We're all giving speeches today. Many of you might get nervous and start speeding up your speech, the speed of your talking. And again, just kind of give an example. Paralinguistics, though, in a everyday life and talking with people, if we're having a conversation, if by adjusting the proper way the tone of my voice, I wouldn't say, "Hello, Raul." So I would mess up your name. But I wouldn't say, very loudly. I might say, "Hello, how are you doing?" It makes, by changing the tone of voice you use when talking with someone, makes them feel more comfortable with you. Same with children. You deal with children, you wouldn't use a very, quiet tone. "How are you doing?" Because they might just walk off. It's also in a more family manner, dealing with family, or a dinner party with family. You might change the way you talk, especially if you come from different backgrounds. If you come from a more poverty background, and you maybe at this point you've built yourself up, you have an education, you have a business, money, you might be used to a different tone and way to speak to people. And suddenly transferring over to a different group, a different situation, it might completely change the way you need to talk to someone. An American anthropologist named Edward T. Hall, he wrote a book called The Silent Language. He gives an example of, in Saudi Arabia, two people of equal standing would talk to each other in a very higher tone, and a more higher decibel tone, to show that they are equal footing and how high they are. And that also with a lower class, or someone who might not be as high-end in Saudi Arabia culture, that they might talk softer than when dealing with someone of higher standings. Just to show that I am lower than you, and you are higher, so you need to talk over me. It's just a way of showing how adjusting tone culturally and across cultures and in cultures just needs to change per situation. Next, we'll move into more of the business kind of work situations. Obviously, you know, we all work, we've all been to work. You need to talk to your boss in a different tone than you would maybe your friend who also works there. It's very altering and changing. It also makes you seem more proficient in what you're talking about. If you're giving a speech in a business meeting, you might not say, oh, you know, hey guys, you know, this is what we're doing today. You might say, you know, hey, this is what we're doing. You might want to take a stronger tone, a tone that leads with power. A good way to say this, and also is in commercials. In many commercials, where there's a central figure, we'll take a very strong tone to say this, and I think most of us are familiar with a certain soap commercial with a certain man named Terry Crews. He comes up and he has the soap and he's yelling, he's loud, he's taking a very strong, demanding tone. And there's many other things that are going on in the commercial. But he's very strong. He's saying, look at this soap. You need this soap. If he stood there or someone else stood there and said, you should buy this Old Spice soap. It's good. It works. You might not get the same effect than if he came up there and he was yelling and using a very strong, demanding tone, and at the speed of he was talking seemed very powerful. Same thing in our everyday work. Now, obviously, the third and final topic would be, how does it affect you if you don't use the correct paralinguistic skills? Pretty much, first impressions. What is it, the first thing you would say to someone? The way you say it and how you say it can affect you. If I just said, hello, how are you doing? You know, obviously his first impression, if this is the first time we were meeting, he would say, oh man, this guy, he's not very confident in himself. But when I said, hello, how are you doing?
Good.
Obviously, he might see me as a powerful figure, and it's very important in business. Or in just everyday life of meeting someone. So, kind of finish off and tie in. Always be aware of how to use it, of how you're using paralanguage in your everyday life, and how it can affect the way that you are perceived by other people, and the way you talk can affect your life.
All right, Trista, this is a great topic, and it's getting into the weeds of communication skill that the average person really doesn't spend a whole lot of time focusing on. This is a good introduction to an issue we'll talk about in greater depth in chapter 4. And let's see. I really appreciate you bringing this issue to our attention. Thank you. Let's see. What am I doing? Yeah, I'm dying.
Yeah, sorry, I'm distracted.
My attention span is so fragile. Let's see. What was I saying? Okay.
It's a fragile
Yeah. Generally, really good delivery, polished, professional, seems really intentional. I really appreciate your effort to alter your way of speaking to demonstrate paralanguage cues. Within the introduction speech, you did a nice job of establishing your credibility, showing us how you became interested in this topic. Within the body of the speech, there's one part that really jumped off the page for me as interesting when you focused on paralanguage cues, showing how social class differences in Saudi Arabia predict different paralanguage cues, the loudness with which someone speaks. I thought that was fascinating. I thought that was really interesting. and not something I had really thought about before. But now I need, as much as I'm interested in talking about American social class differences, now I'm really starting to think about, well, what are the class differences in a workplace that are paralinguistic, that are evidence of someone's status within an organization. Very cool, very cool. A couple things that I want you to watch out for me. First of all, the speech ran longer than what I was looking for, so we need to think about ways of editing out some stuff that might be interesting, but excessive for a 6-minute speech. Maybe there's more concise ways of expressing some ideas.
Right.
Another thing that I'd like you to think about is, since this speech dealt so much with paralinguistic cues, you might do more to draw attention to your examples and make your examples cleaner, and maybe even exaggerate some of the examples to really emphasize what it is we're talking about when we think about, particularly with tone of voice. Volume is easy to understand, pitch is easy to understand, but tone of voice is something that's actually a little tricky to understand. We're thinking about the timbral qualities of someone's voice. So if it's the first day of basic training, my tone of voice for you as your drill sergeant, it's going to be something that's a little rougher. Think about a professional wrestler, the tone of voice when they're cutting a promo. Let me tell you something mean, Gene. It's called vocal fry, what I just did there. That's where there becomes something raspy in my voice. That is called vocal fry. Vocal fry. We're talking about tone of voice. That's where that's coming. And it's distinct from pitch, distinct from volume. Another thing I want you to be mindful of. Paralinguistics also deals with non-verbal vocalizations that are the sounds that people make. Sighing is paralanguage.
And the humming in a conversation.
Yeah,
Listen
yeah.
to someone.
Well, one of your classmates in the other section she's far more mindful now that I've called her out on it, and that's to her credit. Because before I mentioned something, pretty much every single thing that she was remotely irritated by or intimidated by, she would go like this. She'd make these sounds. She'd make these sounds. And I mean, it's kind of cute in some situations, but it was happening constantly during class, during lecture, during classmates' speeches, before her speech. While I'm giving her feedback for her speech, I'm saying, here's some things that you can do differently. Stop that. No. Okay, that is paralinguistic. It is not verbal, it is non-verbal, but it is vocalizations that are meaningful. The one last thing I want to say as a maybe it's a corrective comment, or maybe it reinforces something that you said within your speech, that I want everyone to understand, is that nonverbal communication, particularly paralinguistic cues, they mainly communicate two things, and two things only. Number one, emotional arousal. Whether I'm happy, whether I'm sad, whether I'm afraid, okay? That little humming sounds that woman makes, I mean, that can mean a lot of things. Vocal fry there that time. Okay, happy, scared, afraid. The emotion is what's communicated by paralinguistic cues. But the other thing, when paralinguistic cues happen alongside our verbal behavior, they communicate something about our relationship. So I might say, Tristan, it's really nice to see you. Or I might say, Tristan, it's really nice to see you. All right? On one hand, I'm glad to see my friend. On the other hand, you killed my father and we're about to have a sword fight I'm seeking revenge. Okay? The vocalization, the paralinguistic cues of the second one communicate something very different about the relationship. We don't want to lose sight of that with this topic. right, Tristan, thank you so much.